depending on the size of the tree. This is also true of street trees, so that when you cut down a street tree, it lowers the value of the homes in the immediate area. So I think that a tree ordinance is important to protect the resource that we already have. I encourage the formation of a committee to develop the ordinance. Clearly, the rules we have now aren't working. Okay, so wait a minute. The other values of trees have to do with, they save considerable money in terms of air conditioning. They also hold water, which is an increasingly valuable resource. I think the time and thus the money of the city crews could be better spent doing other things than sabotaging the work of the many volunteers that work in the area of developing the tree resource, are willing to work on the tree ordinance and will continue to work in this area. The second thing has to do with a light ordinance. One of the reasons this is being brought up is the planning department has worked hard with new construction to get people to use intelligent lighting, and some of the owners have then gone ahead after their project is signed off and put in huge glaring floodlights. Basically, the technology is ahead of the codes. If you think of a 100-watt light bulb, an old-fashioned incandescent one, watts is a measure of energy, so it spends 100 watts of energy, and it creates about 1,000, 1,200 lumens. That's the measure of how much light it puts out. Some of the floodlights that people get now use only 3 watts of electricity, but put out like 4,000 lumens. So people think, and they cost $18, $20, these floodlights. So people think it's a deal, people think it's a bargain, but blinding light is unsafe. It does not increase security, and it makes it unsafe for all of us who can't see where we're walking or driving. So those are my 2 highest priorities. I think I think that there are enough volunteers available that a lot of staff time is not important, and I also think that they're old issues, and they're issues that can save us a lot of money in the future.
I have a couple of questions, one about lights and one about trees.
Mm-hmm.
If we accept the failure of oversight at the Riverside Park, if that's an exception.
Riverside, at the river.
The end of Gobi.
Okay.
If that's an exception, and obviously was a mistake, if we leave that aside, you said the rules are not working. When is a significant heritage tree, has the heritage tree been taken down in the last 5 or 8 years that you are aware of in the city of Ukiah?
Along the creeks, yes, trees have been taken down. By heritage, you mean a big old tree?
Right.
They are, many have been taken down in the park. I think those were under with the suggestion of the arborist, however. There's a tree over by Anton Stadium that they're right now thinking of cutting down so that they can save an ugly little shed that has a tarp over it instead of a roof. The tree restoration, now those aren't heritage trees, but part of a tree ordinance is trees that have been planted as mitigation or as a requirement for building or in a restoration area are significant trees and are not to be cut down. Big trees were cut down, you know, where the sweat equity houses are with the community garden and the Sun House and the tennis court, you know that area? The community garden, there were some big trees cut down there just this summer.
Thank you. And regarding lighting, would it make sense if we were to move on an ordinance or anything related to the lighting code, would it make sense to simply say that the bulb of any light should not be visible to any passerby? Would that mandate that the light be focused not toward the street or toward the heavens, but toward the building?
Phil, I would love that. And in some cases, there might be a good idea to limit the number of lights that a person has on their building.
Further questions for Susan?
just wanted to comment, are you aware that the current California building code now requires that building lights be downcast? That the law of California has already changed to this effect.
I think I broke
So
my
our
own rule.
issue, our issue, I believe, is what do we do in terms of enforcement of the rules that are already in place?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Han Yen. I'm the principal of the Instilling Goodness and Developing Virtues schools at City of 10,000 Buddhas. And you have heard from a few of our students today. I'd like to just say a little bit about our curriculum. We have been adopting curriculum to teach humane education, teaching compassion for animals. And I would like to say that this is not just because we are a Buddhist school. It's become more of a mainstream trend that this kind of curriculum is being developed by the Humane Society and other organizations for use in public schools as well. And that there has been research done that if for people who regard themselves as owners versus people who regard themselves as guardians of an animal, they treat their animals differently. And those who are guardians tend not to see them as property and tend to give more attention to them. This was a 2004 study done, and I believe it might be in the material that you received. Also, earlier there was a veterinarian who referred to this ordinance, change in ordinance possibly being a Trojan horse for animal rights things. And I would like to say that I think that this is actually more a reflection of a general public attitude that has already occurred, and that it is more like we should update our ordinances to reflect that attitude. In our ethics class in school, we've been using a book by Matthew Scully, who was the former speechwriter for President George Bush. He's a conservative, Catholic, Republican, and he's well respected, unlike certain perhaps animal rights activists in certain parts of the community. And he talks about it's called Dominion, and I forgot the subtitle of it, but it has to do with the suffering of animals and the mercy that humans should show towards them. That as a Christian or a Jew, we have stewardship or dominion over God's creatures, and that is an obligation that we should show them care and kindness and treat them humanely. It doesn't mean that they are elevated to the status of equal rights with human beings or any such thing, but nevertheless, there is this obligation. So I would also like to say that for priorities, this particular change in wording would require minimal time and money, and there's no new policy to develop and no new language to draft and no administration required after the change. But with this change, we could potentially see a shift in the way animals are regarded on a more large-scale level, and that hopefully it will lead to less abandonment of animals and less and mitigate also overpopulation at our local animal shelters. So I'd like to stop here.
Thank you very much.
Chuck Williams. I'm in favor of nature. I think our population has increased to the point where we have to learn to be stewards of nature. And if having a tree ordinance does that, can help us get back in touch with nature, then that's where we should go. If a lighting ordinance can help us get back in touch with the nature that we live in, that's where we should go.